Hello, welcome back. My name is Angie. I am a Creative Memories Independent Advisor in Michigan, and I am back today with another mystery layout. So, in case you missed the first one, what we're doing here is I am giving you verbal instructions on how to create a layout, and instead of switching over to my desktop and walking you through it step by step, you create the layout to the best of your instruction following. And then if you are part of my Facebook group, you can post your finished layout in the comments for a chance to win a prize. Kind of like the game of telephone where you're listening to the instructions but don't quite know what we're really going for here. Um, so if you want to play along, please join us. I would love to hear in the comments if this is something fun and you like to have more of these in the future. I do try and pick a simpler layout to do instead of making something very complex that you can't follow instructions for. It's fairly simple. This one has a little bit more things going on than the first one I did, but again, still a fairly simple, straightforward layout for us to create together. Um, I will switch you over to my desktop for just a moment and we'll kind of go through what you'll want for this layout. And then I will do a step 1A together just in case you've never done it before or want a refresher. The step 1A does not have to be done at all. Basically, I'm gonna gut my background base page just because I can use the center of the cardstock for some matting in the future or projects in the future. So that's something that you don't want to do. You could fast forward through that, or if you already know how to do it, you can fast forward through it. So I will switch over to my desktop for a moment, again, just to kind of go through the supplies that you might want, and we'll go through step 1A. All right, so here is my desktop. So what we're going to want today is some tape runners, repositional, regular, whichever you prefer. I swap between both depending on what I'm working on. I do have my square punch as well. This is going to be pretty handy to use. If you don't have it, of course, you can just cut your paper with your paper trimmer. Of course, I have both of my trimmers, paper trimmer, photo trimmer. I have not cut down my photos yet, so I do have my photos. And then to actually make the layout, we've got a base page. Again, I'm going to gut this because we are going to cover it up with a larger piece of paper. We have two papers that we're going to use on our background. For the most part, we're just cutting some large squares and rectangles. Then after that, we do need a border element. In this case, I'm using a sticker. You can use a sticker, just a strip of paper. You can use a punched border. And then we've got some photos and mats. And I have just pulled some mats from the mat pack that coordinated with this collection. Of course, you can just add in some other extra paper. You can use the cardstock that we're gutting from this background page, whatever you need. Or if you are not a photo matter, you don't need to. That is completely up to you. So we've got some photos, some mats we're going to trim. For the sketch that I'm following, it calls for 3 square photos. For one of mine, I'm going to leave it a little bit more horizontal and long. And then we just want kind of some scraps of paper, or if you don't have scraps of paper for the collection you're working with, to cut some squares out of, or cut them with the trimmer to kind of adorn the page. I've got a few embellishments. This is basically like my little title for the page. That's it. So there will be a spot to put a title, whether you want to cut out some letters, whether you've got a journal box or something for that, or again, we can just do some embellishing. So step 1A, which you can do, you don't have to do. Step 1A is I'm going to gut this paper. Step 1B is to cut an 11 by 11 inch piece of paper to put on top of this. So for the most part, this is getting covered up. I prefer to gut this in save paper, make it a little lighter in my album. And again, especially with cardstock and pretty paper, I want to save that. I want to use it on a future project, mat my photos, or whatever the case may be. So we are going to basically cut a square in the center here, and we're going to use our handy dandy trimmer for it. And this one's very helpful because it has the line on the side here so we can see what we're doing. So for this page, I'm going to cut a 1-inch square all the way around. So I'm going to put my paper in and line it up with the 1-inch mark. Now I'm not going to start my blade at all the way at the top. I'm going to move it down, and on the side here there is a ruler. Zoom. I don't know if you can see it. So there is a ruler, and I'm going to line my line on the cutting housing unit, the blade cutting unit. I'm going to line that up with the 1. And then I'm going to bring it all the way down, and I'm going to stop at 11, wherever 11 is. I'm looking at it sideways there. So we're not cutting all the way through our paper. So I'm going to actually rotate this so I can see the ruler on the side. Make sure we're lined back up at 1. Start at 1, pull, push down, and go until 11. And now we're going to do that same thing all the way around. We are just going to rotate our page. Or cardstock or paper, whatever. Until we do all 4 sides. And there we go. So now we have the background piece of our paper, because all you're going to see is a little bit around the edge. And then this whole big chunk can be used for photo mats, can be used for punching, whatever we need to use it for on a future project. We've got a nice chunk of paper that we've saved here. All right, I'm going to switch you back to me. All right, welcome back. I'm going to switch you back to me, and now we are going to go through the layout. So we're going to take a piece of paper that I have one that's fairly tonal. This can be however you want. I'm not going to tell you which papers to choose. This one for me is a little bit tonal. It is, for the most part, the background of your page, and we are going to cut it to an 11 by 11 inch square. And that is going to get placed right on the background page that we just gutted, or if you skip that step, it's going to go right on your background page. When you are doing this gutting technique, depending on how much space you give yourself with your papers, sometimes you might want to use your mini tape ruler or tape runner. The mini tape runner is smaller by comparison to the regular in terms of width. If you've got a narrower space to use some tape runner on. This one with the sizes of the paper, if you gutted it at 1 inch like myself, you should be able to use regular tape runner fine. But the mini is definitely helpful sometimes. Okay, so we've got our background page. We've got an 11 by 11 inch square adhered into the center of that. We're going to take our other piece of paper that we had. And we're going to trim it to a piece of paper 6 inches by 11.5 inches. And if you have a directional piece of paper, this one is going to be going vertical. So this one, I do have some fairly directional paper that way, where my words, if I turned it sideways or upside down, my words would be upside down. It is fairly graphic, so I don't know that anybody would pay attention if it was upside down, but I would know, right? So again, this is going to be vertical on your page, so make sure that it is 6 inches wide, 11.5 inches tall. All right, so that piece of paper is going to go towards the right of your layout. I'm going to say about an inch, inch and a quarter in. Along the right hand side of the piece of paper that you just cut is where your border element's going to go. So depending on, excuse me, depending on how wide your border element is, you might want to shimmy your paper in a little bit. We want to see a little bit of the second sheet of paper to the right of what we're putting down right now. I'm going to put mine at 1 1/4, and then put my border on it. And we're putting the border, again, right along the right side of this 6-inch piece. So 6 inch by 11.5 is going about an inch, inch and a quarter in from the right hand side. It is vertical, kind of centered in the page, so you've got about 1/4 inch top and bottom. Once you've got that piece of paper down, I'm going to take my border element and we're going to put it on that piece of paper, the one that we just did. It's not going to go top and bottom for the whole page, so you are going to trim a smidge off. Kind of a delicate border here, so I'm going to take my time getting that off the sheet. And you just want to center with the paper we just put down. And for me, I'm going to have to cut part of my sticker off. Didn't really want to cut plain in half, but I'm going to. That's kind of one of those things that, you know what, nobody's going to notice at the very bottom of my page that there's just the nose of a plane and not the whole thing. If you don't want to trim your border element, you can have it go top and bottom of the page, but my sketch shows just along that 11.5 inch piece of paper. And that, for the most part, is the background. Now we are going to trim our mats and trim our photos. For me, again, sketch calls for 3 photos, 4 by 4 inch mats, and then trimming your photos to 3.5 by 3.5. I like a little less of a mat showing and a little bit more of my photos showing, so I'm going to trim to my mats to 4 by 4 and my photos to 3 3/4 and 3 3/4. So just a 1/4 inch mat that goes around it. Again, this is the time where if you have different photos, if you have different sizes, go ahead and make do with what you need. I do have one that I'm going to adjust a little bit. So let's trim our photos, and I have not done this yet, so kind of playing along, making sure everything's centered. let's see, I have one again that I'm going to have a little bit longer. I think I can do that. I'm going to have a photo mat at the bottom of 4 by 5. So I'm going to trim my photo to 3 3/4 and 4 3/4. All right, so trim my photos. I'm going to trim my mats. So again, I'm using mats from the mat pack. If you don't have those, grab some extra cardstock, grab some extra paper. Maybe you're going to use the piece of paper that we just gutted from your background. And aside from my one longer photo, trimming my mats to 4 by 4. All right, so now let's mat photos. There's like some teeny tiny words on this one, so I'm gonna turn that. You can't hardly make out the words, but it's a little bit directional. All right, so now for our photos, we are going to, this is probably the most difficult, but this is also the most do what you want part of the layout. So we're going to kind of stagger the photos and layer them kind of along the 6-inch piece. My first one is going to be about 1/4 inch down on the 11-inch piece, kind of hanging off both the 11-inch piece and the 6-inch piece. Again, this is going to be kind of difficult to explain, so just stagger them however works for you. The middle piece is, I have to the left of my border element staggered on top of the first one, and my last one is staggered on top of the last one, kind of even with the first one up above. Again, about 1/4 inch or so up from the bottom of the 11-inch piece. So that is going to be the most difficult part of me trying to explain this layout, but also the most lay your photos out however they work. But we are kind of staggering them. So I'm going to adhere those down. I kind of like the way it looks right where they're at. This, I'm just making sure they're straight. And the one of the papers I have is some waves, so it's kind of making my eyes unsure of the straightness of my photo there for a second. All right, so once you have your photos down where you want them, those little strips or scratches of paper that we had, or again, if you don't have scraps to the collection you're using, if you're cutting some pieces of paper, we are going to take our square punch, or if you don't have the square punch, grab your paper trimmer, and the square punch is 1 3/4 by 1 3/4. So again, if you don't have the square punch, you can cut just some pieces of paper. We are going to cut 4 squares. And I like, when I am using punches, I like to turn it upside down and put my paper in. So especially since I do have some smaller strips of paper, so I can see where I'm cutting. If I have a texture paper. Maybe I have a floral paper and I'm trying to get a specific floral. If I'm upside down with my punch, I can see exactly what I'm punching out. I could make sure in this case, I can make sure that it's fairly straight. If I have lines, I want to make sure my lines are straight, right? Okay, so with our squares, I've got 4 of them. We are going to stagger them. We've got one of them, and I don't know which squares I want where. We are going to kind of stagger them on the pictures, off the pictures, around the pictures. One of them is to go kind of in the upper left, where your title will go. Your title and embellishments are, in this case, shown kind of around that. And these are kind of good pieces if you want to do some embellishing, some embellishment clusters. This is kind of a good spot to put some of them, whether you're adding some flowers or maybe some gnomes or whatever the case may be. Kind of a starting point for some of those. For my title, I've got a little embellishment cluster that came with the artsy add-on kit for this collection, and that's basically going to be my title. You could also do a little bit of journaling in one of these squares. So I'm just kind of figuring out which color squares I want where. Excuse me. Kind of playing with my patterns a little bit for which ones I want working. And also I am doing a little bit of evening out colors. So I had one yellow photo mat for my very top photo, and then I have another kind of coordinating yellow square. It's not the same paper, but very much the same tone. So I want my photo mat to be on the top and then my yellow at the bottom. Kind of the opposite of that, my bottom photo had a navy blue mat, and I have a little piece of the navy blue. I'm kind of evening that out. And then other ones I have just more of a pattern paper. I want that to kind of stand out a little bit more, so that's off a little bit. And then I have a more tonal one that I'm kind of keeping up with my title, so it doesn't really take away from that. It actually coordinates quite well with my embellishment. So I'm going to put those down. So kind of keep that in mind when you're working with your squares, kind of balancing out some of the colors on your page. All right, now I have to figure out how I want my little cluster to go. And that is it. That's the layout. So again, at this point, you can kind of embellish up some of those clusters. I might dig through my packet of stickers and little like epoxies that come with the collections and see maybe I want to adorn the squares a little bit more. But at this point, this is embellishing and journaling. Again, one of those squares or just somewhere off to the side of your page, you can add some journaling. But if you are playing along, I will have this in my group. You can post your finished layout in the comments, and if it is submitted by next Saturday, I didn't look at the date, next Saturday is January 24th, posted by midnight Eastern Central Time. You'll be entered in for a chance of a drawing. If you're just playing along for fun, I feel free to post your layout in the comments below so we can kind of take a peek at your interpretation of the instructions. I hope this was fun for you. Happy scrapping.